What's going on, everybody? Today we have our review of the first match day in the Premier League. Of course, 4 teams off: Manchester United, Aston Villa, Manchester City, and Burnley all off. But we are going to go game by game and talk about all the teams who probably underperformed, some who overperformed. Perhaps we shall see. But let's jump into it. We're going to start with Fulham and Arsenal. That game ended 3-0, and easy enough for Arsenal. Now, when we did our predictions for the Premier League season, Fulham we had at the bottom, and they kind of played like it today. They don't really have any bite going forward. Defensively, they're still a bit of a mess. I remember seeing the comment about one of the center backs who came up last time with Fulham, wasn't playing too particularly well, and they go down, and they're back up, and he's still here, and that kind of just epitomizes what I think is going to be their relegation push. It's just there's not enough here at Fulham, and I think they're wary of spending money like they did last time when they came up and spent a ton of money. A lot of players didn't work out. They went right back down. I think they're wary of doing that again, but they still need more, so they're kind of in a weird position, and it looks like they may be going down. Arsenal, on the other hand, couple new signings. Gabriel, Willian, both starting to that day, not today, but that day. Willian, of course, showing his quality, assisting, setting up all 3 Arsenal goals. Gabriel getting off the mark as well. We'll see how Arsenal go forward. They were all right today, but my thing with Arsenal is that they're going to have trouble breaking down teams who sit back in blocks. They're going to have trouble defensively still, I think. But we'll see going forward. They were pretty impressive against Fulham. Though Fulham I expect to come up on the bottom. So there's not so much I can say about Arsenal, though Willian and Gabriel did both look pretty good. Next we have Crystal Palace and Southampton, finishing 1-0 to Palace. This one could have gone either way. In our predictions we picked Southampton to win 1-0, but this is what happens when you concede first to Crystal Palace. They are incredibly well drilled in scenarios where they are ahead. When they score the first goal, I don't remember what the record was, but it was an incredible record of them winning or at minimum drawing games when they score first. They do not lose very often when they concede first. They are very well drilled at the back. They could use a couple better players, but they're very well drilled at the back. Zaha scoring the goal. We talked about him as well when we did our predictions. We said that they would just stay up, and Zaha is a match winner, and he was a match winner today. Also, Eze came on the pitch and looked very, very bright. I thought he looked very bright when he came on. He's very quick. He's very agile. He can beat players left and right, and he makes it look relatively easy as well when you see it. So he looks pretty bright. We'll see how he gets on with the rest of the team as we move into the season, but a good start for Palace and a not so good start for Southampton, who I think could use another player or two, but they were the better team up until the goal. You let a goal on the break, but they look like one of those teams who are in transition from kind of like Brighton, where they were kind of just trying to get results, to now we are going to play football. They were playing their football, and in the first half hour or so, right before the goal, they looked very, very good. Fullbacks flying forward and stuff like that, but they were hit on the break a couple times, and of course, Palace scored their goal on the break, and then after that, it was kind of Palace dictating how things were going to go, and, they were defending very, very well and not really letting Southampton do too much. But, the first half hour or so, very promising for Southampton. We'll see how that goes on into the season, but not exactly the result they wanted, though I don't think they are going to be in danger of relegation. That is something I think Palace is going to have to deal with, not Southampton, but Palace grabbed an early 3 points, and it's a good 3 points for them. Next we have Liverpool and Leeds, probably the game of the weekend, defending incredibly optional throughout the whole game. It finished 4-3 to Liverpool, a late penalty. 2 penalties, a hat trick from Salah. Leeds grabbing a couple of good goals on their own. The Jack Harrison goal that leveled it up at 1 was a very, very good goal, and the third goal was a very good team goal. Leeds are going to come in. We'll talk about Leeds first. They are going to come into this league with a lot of teams who want to outplay them. and they're going to cause problems. All those teams that are going to play Leeds, who want to play them all around the park, hold on to the ball and stuff like that, they're going to have severe trouble with Leeds, and it's just the way Leeds play. They almost set up to let you come at them and open the game up. They want a very open game, and they dictated that when they played Liverpool. Of course, Liverpool liked to play in space as well, and Liverpool ended up winning the game, but they were very impressive Leeds. They have runners from everywhere. The midfielders make runners into the box. It's very difficult to defend. If you are caught up the pitch and you are not forcing your way back in midfield and you have like a lazy midfield, you are going to get caught out a lot playing this Leeds team if you are up the pitch. If you are, say, maybe an Arsenal of a couple years ago and you have Ozil, you have your front three and you have Ozil, Xhaka, and another midfielder in there, and Xhaka's not exactly the quickest, and Ozil's just not going to track back, that's the kind of team Leeds are looking to play and looking to exploit. They are going to outwork you in midfield or try to outwork you in midfield. They're going to bypass better midfields. They were doing it against Liverpool, just long balls, and then up to the forwards, who they keep three up the pitch most of the time, and they are just going to launch long balls and then outwork you, outpace you, outrun you, essentially, as they run midfielders into the box. They are very well drilled. They are all incredibly fit, and they are going to cause a lot of problems. Very, very impressive Leeds, though not coming away with the win at Anfield is not necessarily a bad thing, but they will be probably thinking pretty, or the rest of us will be thinking highly of Leeds. They may not in the locker room, but a pretty good performance from them. And then Liverpool, a bit uncharacteristic. There were a couple of mistakes there from the Jack Harrison goal. Trent and Gomez beaten too easily. Virgil van Dijk, of course, with his mistake as well. But they did get a hat trick from Salah, who had a really poor preseason, so it's nice to get him off the mark, I imagine, very quickly. And Salah looks very fit and hungry and stronger, seemingly. He was riding a lot more challenges than he normally was during the game. He seems a lot more hungry and really, really started the season well, of course. Henderson starting, though he didn't look 100% fit, couldn't really keep up on the runs back. And you noticed with Henderson, of course, he wasn't 100% fit, but Henderson loves to work. And Henderson was having trouble keeping up at the back. The midfield in general having trouble covering back against this Leeds team who love to run midfielders in. But as I said, it's going to be one of those games that I think is more of a one-off for Liverpool's defense than a worrying trend. We'll see going forward, of course, but I think, Fabinho not playing doesn't give it as much of a defensive pivot. Henderson not fully fit. Those things, we'll see. Curtis Jones came on the pitch for the last 20 or so minutes, very tidy on the ball, can move with it. A bright player still. And then the forward three were all right. Not necessarily, Firmino didn't play particularly well. Mane was okay, but Mane is getting to a point now, I think, where just having him on the pitch, if he's playing poorly, is a lot better than having some other players on the pitch who are playing pretty well. His vision, his range of passing, his ability to move, it's getting close to impossible to defend, and not everything may come off in the end, but it's getting to that point where he's starting to really control games and really, really help teams along. He is a top player. But yes, 4-3 the final there. Very, very good game. Next we had West Ham and Newcastle. West Ham, of course, losing 2-0, and we thought West Ham would go down. They were in our bottom three in our predictions here, and they were once again not very good. And there's something at West Ham where they are in a little bit of trouble. They want to bring players in. They don't particularly have the most money, but they have a ton of money sitting around. Felipe Anderson was on the bench. Haller was on the bench. Yarmolenko was on the bench. there was a lot of money just sitting around at West Ham, and I imagine if they wanted to move some of them on, they couldn't. Even if they wanted to, they couldn't. But I think there needs to be some signings there. They didn't look very good. Newcastle, on the other hand, all of their signings who played, Jeff Hendrick got a goal on his debut, played very well. Callum Wilson, a goal on his debut, another one who played well. Jamal Lewis, who played well. They have recruited very, very well, Newcastle, and it looks like, as we were kind of wondering in our preview of the year pretty much, if Newcastle were going to start playing a little bit more expansive. It looks like they have, and it looks like maybe they were just needing a couple more signings in there. That's what it looks like. But there are some good players on the pitch now at Newcastle. St. Maximin, Callum Wilson, Hendrick, Jamal Lewis, Andy Carroll was back and fit and causing problems. There are some good players at Newcastle, and we'll see if they can build on it. West Ham, on the other hand, need to do something. This is already one of those games that they needed points from and got nothing from it. Obviously, everyone's going to grow into the season, but you don't want to start the year losing 2-0 at home, not really putting up too much of a fight. I know they hit the bar twice, one from a set piece. These are one of those games you got to get points at least to just help out the squad a little bit, but we'll see going forward. This is one of our teams we picked to go down. I'm not so sure they did anything to sway me from that opinion, but Newcastle we thought would have a pretty decent year, and they've started very, very well. Next we had West Brom and Leicester. West Brom, to me, they look a bit like Fulham, except they're a little bit more defensively sound. That's why we picked them to finish above Fulham, because there was long periods there where Leicester were not really doing anything, and then, of course, one goal went in, 2 penalties. It finished 3-0, but West Brom, as we said, defensively more sound, but not too much different from Fulham. They don't really have too much going forward. Of course, Leicester are a very good team, so it's tough to judge your first game in the Premier League, but it didn't seem like they had too much in the squad to challenge and really kind of stay up. It'll be very, very difficult for West Brom. Leicester, on the other hand, a 3-0 win. They'll be happy getting off the mark. Jamie Vardy with 2 goals as well. He'll be happy to get off the mark. As well as Castagne at left back. He's getting off quickly. I still think they need a signing or 2 out wide, but we shall see. But a very good start for Leicester and kind of par for the course considering how this season has started and who they played. Really, it'll be tough to really judge Leicester, but there were long periods of time there where they weren't creating too much, and then it kind of opened up in the second half once the first goal went in, but we'll see as we go forward. A good win, couple goals for their main man. They'll be delighted, I imagine. Tottenham 0, Everton 1. This one we picked as a 1-1, and for different reasons it finished 1-0. Everton looked better than I thought they would, and Tottenham looked about how I thought they would. I mean, Tottenham, we talked about, Tottenham have a couple players in who I don't particularly think make the team better, but they make the team tougher. We'll see. With Tottenham, I just don't. There is so much about Tottenham. I might just do a separate video about Tottenham on why they're sticking here. I firmly believe they'll be stuck where they are for the next 5 or 6 years, unless a couple things happen. But the squad's, 1, just not good enough. 2, the tactics. Mourinho's come in to a team. Mourinho likes to come in and make footballers work, and the problem with Mourinho and what football is today is there are a lot of players now who don't necessarily love putting in that tremendous effort, getting tough, and it's just it's a different kind of player now, and that's not a knock on players or anything. That is just how it is. And Mourinho's one of those managers who really wants players to work for 90 minutes and track back and, put some effort in, get tough. And this Tottenham squad doesn't really seem to have that for me or for him. You watch the documentary and this particular thing comes up quite a bit. And I think that is a huge problem here. And I think that's why they bought in Højbjerg, though he didn't play particularly well in Doherty. Players who are tough, who are going to up the team's work rate as a whole. There are very few players on this Tottenham team whose work rate is going to really show. Dele Alli is just not going to. Sissoko, sometimes Sissoko is one of those players where I think he has to be in the mood to really, really work. Heung-min Son and Harry Kane, they're both going to work. Lucas on and off some days. The defense on and off some days. Ben Davies there to work. Aurier on and off some days. So it'll be tough for Mourinho to survive his whole reign here, and survive his reign maybe 3 years. It'll be tough for him to go 3 years here without getting sacked, because he'll need to overhaul so much of this squad. This squad in general is just very, very stale. And Everton have shown Tottenham right there what a little bit of change can really do. They swapped out everyone in the midfield, and they were a completely different team. Allen, James Rodriguez, Decore, they were running the show, and they looked very, very good. Maybe not completely gelled together yet, but there were long periods of time there where they were dominating the game, and those three players look like they are going to cause problems. They've got good players on the bench. Sigurdsson can come off the bench and really cause problems as well. So Everton have gotten better. They were the better team against Tottenham. They got their goal on a free kick, but they had plenty of chances. It's going to be a tough year for Tottenham, and an Everton year where they'll be better than they were last year. And we picked them to finish 8th, I believe, ahead of Tottenham. But they can definitely push for Europe. Decore said that was their goal. They can definitely make that push. Sheffield United 0, Wolves 2. Wolves got off to a flyer here, 2 goals in the first couple of minutes. It looked like Sheffield hadn't come out of preseason just yet. And then the game kind of turned a bit even, though Wolves were probably the better team, probably edged it a little bit. The second half, Sheffield had a couple of chances, just couldn't finish. And that is why we thought Sheffield would finish a little bit lower down the table than they did last year. This is to me a high-end championship squad, low-end Premier League squad who's incredibly well drilled and incredibly well managed by Chris Wilder. But in the end, this talent here does not match up. A more clinical team could have bought this back level. They had a couple of really good chances, hit the post once. Wolves, of course, were doing their normal thing. They were creating opportunities, especially early on. Traore, they pushed him high up the pitch toward the end of the game, and he was creating really good opportunities for himself. They deployed at right back, pretty much right wing back to start the game, and then they pushed him forward, and he was causing major problems. So Wolves have started how I figured they would. Sheffield have kind of not started as well as I thought they may have. I thought this game would finish 0-0. They just weren't ready out of the block, and then it kind of turned into a typical Sheffield United Wolves kind of game, how we thought the game would go. But you can't spot teams' early goals. Of course, free header on a corner pretty much, and then Jimenez, you can't leave him space like that. He is deadly, and he shows it. So a good start for Wolves, not so great for Sheffield, but I'm not worried. A lot of people are worried about Sheffield United. I'm not necessarily worried. I think they're going to be okay, but not the start they would have wanted. And then Brighton 1, Chelsea 3. We got the score on this one right in our predictions. This one was a bit harsh on Brighton, though, who started really, really well, and then a really ridiculous mistake in midfield led to a penalty. And then Chelsea were, fortunate enough to grab the lead. And then Chelsea, the first 45 minutes, really didn't do too much. It was all Brighton mostly. And then the second half started the same way. And then Trossard finally scored for Brighton, and they went deservedly level. And then Reece James with an absolute cracker into the corner, a minute afterward. And all of Brighton's hard work was undone, and they go chasing again. And then Zuma gets a little bit lucky, a deflection, and it deceives the goalkeeper, rolls into the net, and that's game over. Brighton probably deserves something from this game. There were some glimpses with the new system here. I mean, Brighton came out, and we talked about it in our predictions was Brighton, I think, spent the second half of last year and all of preseason working toward imposing their football on other teams. Now, they were playing out of the back. They were doing some really lovely passing moves. Lallana went off hurt right before halftime, but he was playing really, really well. They were all playing really, really well, really intricate, good football. Could use, a better last pass or, that sort of stuff. Just a couple little things here and there, but they were playing really lovely stuff. And I think, as I said, they're going to go into this new season going for it. They are going to play their football regardless of how you play yours, and they are going to try and work their way into it and just impose themselves on other teams, and that's all down to the manager. There are hard workers on this team. There are good players on this team. Trossard's a good player. Lamptey is an incredibly good player, and the problem with Lamptey is he's really, really good. I don't expect him to be at Brighton very, very long. He is a very, very good player at the right back position. He was bombing up and down the pitch today, taking people on, putting really good balls in. He is a proper good player, and he was causing Chelsea all sorts of problems. Chelsea, on the other hand, were not very good. I don't want to say not very good. They just weren't imposing themselves on the game like I figured they would. They were kind of sitting back, and I'm not sitting back. Maybe Brighton were just that good, but Chelsea had trouble in the first half, especially getting onto the ball, doing what they could. Their goal came from a penalty that came from a Brighton mistake. Of course, they were working in midfield, but I think they're also missing a couple players up front. I don't think normally Havertz would be playing out right and Mount would be playing out left. I think that would switch up just a touch. We'll see. I think Havertz is more of an in-the-middle kind of thing, and then they would have, in theory, Pulisic out left and Ziyech out right, and then Havertz behind instead of Loftus-Cheek. So there are obviously growing pains, and there will continue to be growing pains here for Chelsea for a little bit. But today they weren't overly impressive. There were some glimpses here and there, but I'm not going to judge Chelsea on this one game. One, because they came away with the 3 points, which is obviously great, and then two, they're going to need time to gel, and that's as simple as that. They still have Ziyech to bring in, Thiago Silva to bring in. We'll see if they make more signings. There's a goalkeeper to come in. A lot of people thought Kepa should have had should have saved Trossard's shot. Went right under his hand. So there are things to change about Chelsea still, but today wasn't. It didn't come flying out of the blocks today, and they didn't come into the game and dominate and show everyone that they are going to be one of those forces. It'll take a little bit, but not to take anything away from it. Obviously, they grabbed the 3 points, but Brighton played very, very well. So a decent start for a couple of teams here. Newcastle will be delighted. I think Brighton will feel pretty good, even though they didn't win the game. Wolves will be delighted. Everton will be delighted. I think Leeds will feel pretty good, and Palace will be delighted that they got the result. There are teams here who are going to struggle, just looking at it. West Brom, Fulham, West Ham. These teams are going to struggle, just flat out. We'll see what happens next week. There will be a couple of different things coming, obviously, but we'll jump into it next week. So hope you guys enjoyed the video. Let me know how you guys felt about some of the teams down below, some debuts, and I'll talk to you guys in a bit.